I don't wake up in the morning thinking about the United States. I wake up thinking about Canadians. That's the difference. There's more than enough work to be done right here at home. We're focused on building this country stronger. And frankly, there's a misunderstanding about just how dependent we really are on the United States, so I have to ask. Yesterday you said you're not backing down, that Canada won't make concessions just to bring Americans to the table. So what's the strategy here? What are you actually prepared to do to get them to negotiate? Or are you comfortable staying in this kind of uneasy standstill? Look, that's not exactly how I framed it yesterday, so I'm not going to attach myself to that interpretation. That moment wasn't just another press exchange. It was a signal, clear and unmistakable, that the Canada-US relationship is shifting, and it's shifting quickly. Over the past few weeks, the situation has escalated fast. It started with sharp rhetoric out of Washington. Then came pushback, not just from Canadians, but increasingly from voices inside the United States. And then came the demands, expectations that Canada should offer concessions before talks even begin. But this is where everything changes, because once again, Canada didn't fold. Under Prime Minister Mark Carney, the message is now unmistakable. Canada will not trade away its position just to get a seat at the table, and it will not return to a relationship built on overdependence. The old assumptions, that Canada will bend, that Canada needs the US more, are now being openly challenged. What we're seeing isn't just tension, it's a reset. And in this video, we break down exactly what Carney said, how he addressed Donald Trump, and why this moment matters. I guess where the confusion comes in is that the Americans are saying this isn't really a negotiation. They're laying out what they expect Canada to do, and Canada isn't meeting those expectations. That is a negotiation. That's simply their position. But let's be clear. There are two sides in any negotiation. We're not here to sit quietly, take notes, and follow instructions from the United States. We understand their position, but we also understand what serves Canada's interests, and where our shared interests align. This government is capable of moving on multiple fronts at once. We're building domestically, strengthening our economy, and at the same time preparing for detailed negotiations. And if waiting is required, we're prepared for that too. This isn't just a response, it's a shift in posture. For years, the unspoken assumption has been that Canada reacts while the United States dictates direction. That pressure flows one way and Canada adjusts accordingly. Carney is rejecting that entire model. He's making it clear that Canada is not entering these discussions as a reactive player. It's entering with its own priorities, its own timeline, and its own strategic goals. And that distinction matters. Because negotiations aren't just about what's said at the table. They're shaped by the stance each side brings into the room. A country seen as reactive loses leverage before talks even begin. A country seen as deliberate and independent changes the balance immediately. That's exactly what's happening here. Canada is no longer reacting. It's positioning. And once that shift takes hold, the effectiveness of pressure starts to weaken. Look, there are a number of trade issues between the two countries, most of them raised by the United States. They've introduced tariffs that clearly violate existing agreements. Steel, aluminum, automobiles, forest products, the list is long. We're ready to sit down and address all of this. But let's be clear. Understanding their concerns doesn't mean accepting their framing. Even the so-called trade irritants they mention go both ways. And some of the responses, like provincial decisions on alcohol distribution, are made independently, based on local considerations. What stands out here isn't just the answer, it's the way the question itself is framed. Because it assumes that U.S. demands are the starting point. Carney doesn't accept that premise. Instead, he shifts the focus to something far more important, whether those actions align with existing agreements. And with that, the conversation moves away from pressure and back to principle. There are 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum, additional measures tied to those sectors, auto tariffs that contradict side agreements, tariffs on forest products. These aren't minor issues. They're fundamental. We understand the U.S. has shifted its broader trade approach, but ultimately, Both countries benefit when we work together in a way that serves mutual interests. This is where Canada's position evolves from resistance to control. Carney isn't refusing negotiation. He's defining it, and that difference is critical. One approach reacts to pressure. The other shapes the framework itself. And in any negotiation, the side that defines the framework often shapes the outcome. Of course, it's not normal. That's what a rupture looks like. Things have fundamentally changed. But here's what matters. We know exactly what we're focused on. We wake up thinking about affordability, about making life better for Canadians, about building a stronger, more independent, more prosperous country. That's the priority. Our relationship with the United States matters, of course. But it doesn't define us. We don't wake up thinking about the United States. We think about Canadians. There's a clear misunderstanding about dependence. Yes, the US is our largest trading partner, but we are also one of theirs. This is a two-way relationship, a deeply interconnected system where both sides rely on each other. That's why most of our trade remains tariff-free. And ultimately, our future will be determined by what we build here, at home. Canadians understand that. Not everyone south of the border seems to. This is the most important moment in the entire exchange, because it challenges one of the oldest assumptions that Canada depends on the United States. This isn't dependence, it's interdependence, and that changes everything. Because if reliance is mutual, then leverage is mutual. And if leverage is mutual, pressure loses its power. What we're witnessing isn't just political tension, it's a strategic shift. Canada is moving from reaction to intention, from pressure to positioning. The United States is still operating on the assumption of leverage. Canada is now operating on the understanding of it. And the more that gap becomes visible, the clearer the reality becomes. This isn't about concessions anymore. It's about control of the narrative.